Turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta. The seas are rising, but the struggle's long. We're gonna turn history, turn it around, and the CEO's got money.
And we need to come up. Okay.
Technical problems.
That's all good. I think just, at a time when we need like radical new ways of connecting with each other, we have a correlated need of skilled connectors of people who are not afraid to create these spaces that challenge us to grow individually and together, and who have the conviction to facilitate that very demanding process. So with that, my thanks to you, Matt, and the floor is all yours.
That was beautiful, Max. Thank you. And I hope I get to hear you teach back tomorrow. And I'll see how sleepy you look at 9 a.m. our time when we all get on the webcam. So our topic tonight is post-election nonviolence strategies and tactics. And here's where I would like to start. If you would please go to your chat and share a way that you have felt in the last 2 weeks and how it shows up in your body. A way that you have felt anytime in the last 2 weeks and how it shows up in your body. Eleanor says guarded. Vanessa says burnout and fatigued. Greg, exhausted and tense. Paul, terrified and feeling suffocated. Sherry writes overwhelmed and shallow breathing. Katrina, scared, tightness in the chest. You've got constricted, tight muscles, anxious, hard to sleep, hard to breathe, dread, hard to sleep. Wow, y'all. So isn't this a great time to have a fun meeting where we're thinking about exciting nonviolent possibilities? I just wanted to start with a kind of a reality check about where we're at. And I wonder if just right now, however, I see these body states like tight muscles and hard to breathe, feeling suffocated. I wonder if we can just take a minute as we start right now. And if you haven't stretched your body in a little while, why don't you just do that right now? And make sure that you're actually sitting in some way that's comfortable or standing or whatever. And just give yourself one good breath right now. Just give your whole body, mind, and spirit one good breath. Let's do it all together. Thank you. Well, if you came for the answers about nonviolence strategies and tactics in the post-election era, like if you thought that I was going to like give it to you and then we were going to go home and having attained enlightenment, like, sorry, that's not the presentation that I brought. This is going to be an exploration together. And so here are some of the goals that I bring. To plant or nourish seeds for nonviolence organizing different from legislative advocacy or just protest. To explore building blocks of powerful nonviolent action and to share together about what's ripe now. I will be looking at chat throughout, and so I would encourage you at any point that you've got a comment or a question or something to just throw it up in chat. One of the amazing things about Zoom, which can also be overwhelming, is how it's all happening at the same time in multiple layers. And so you might have something to say that someone else might have something to comment on. And so I fully approve of all of those conversations happening at the same time. It's definitely not like the only thing happening here is what I'm saying or even what I think is happening. So the agenda is getting started, a little bit about language and tools, and then exploring what's ripe now. And actually, there's a little bit of what's ripe now that we're going to do as we get started. But let me just see if I have a couple of other getting started type comments. Tonight will be a process of discovery. I believe in equalizing participation. So hearing from as many people as possible. Every now and then, I might just randomly call on somebody. And if you go on at great length, I'm going to need to keep us moving. So we only have an hour and 15 minutes or something until this is over. So here's the next step to help us move forward. Okay, I'm going to ask you to put something in chat, but do not press enter until I say go. Okay? So you have time to write it in chat, but do not hit enter until I say go. Please write one sentence about the current moment in which we find ourselves. Right now, what's true? So just take a moment. I'm going to give you a moment. If you haven't found your chat, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a navigation bar and you can open up chat. Or if you're on some other kind of device, you can like flip over to it. So I'm going to give you about 15 more seconds, maybe 30. The current moment in which we find ourselves. This session is post-election nonviolent strategies and tactics. Like, what is this moment? Bruce and I were talking on Friday, and we were like, we thought it was going to be after the election, but it's not. So what is this moment? How does it feel? How does it taste? What's going on? What's true? Okay, I'm going to count down from 5 and then ask everybody to hit enter at the same time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Now, we are going to, we're going to spend a little time hearing, seeing, digesting what we just shared with each other. So the way that I'd like to invite you to do that is I put the prompt right before anybody posted their answer. And so you can scroll all the way back up, or depending on how you read, from bottom up, or we'll only read 5 of them, whatever you like. But what I'm asking you to do is like to reflect and digest what you see here. And in a minute or two, I'm going to ask people to raise their hand who'd like to share a reflection about the themes that you're seeing, in terms of, if we're reading the signs of the times right now from what people put in chat here, what do we see? So just take some time, and I'm going to be quiet and let you read and kind of see what rises out of all of these sharings. And just notice how you feel in your body as you're trying to discern the present moment. So I would like to ask, I'm showing on the screen right now the way that you can actually raise your hand in Zoom if you open up the participants menu at the bottom of it, there's a little blue hand. And so you can raise your hand that way. If you would like to, now, I am not asking you right now to say aloud the thing you put in chat. I'm asking you to share some of what you're synthesizing from what you're reading about the signs of the times. So if someone is ready, you can raise your hand. If you can't find that little blue hand, don't worry about it. You can put a star in chat, and I will count that as raising your hand. But there's so many people I can't see you, so like, don't just wave your hand in front of your video. Okay. When you're ready, give me some synthesis. Eleanor, would you come off mute and talk to us?
Yeah, I think, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I live on mute, so. I see suspense, fear, and division.
Thank you, Eleanor. I see Jim.
Yes, I see great apprehension.
Okay, Greg.
Uncertainty.
Okay. Okay, so we're getting some of those realities spoken. Are there other things that you see here? Jean.
I see many barriers to getting anything done. Sorry, Gene B.
I see hopefulness.
Oh, great. There are more than one Jeans. So I called on the one that I saw had a raised hand. Excellent. Welcome all the Jeans. And Jean Moust, you said hopefulness.
I do. I see that in the way of there being some possibilities that could make things better.
Okay. Thank you. Bert Sachs.
I see two things. One is a statement that there's an appearance of democracy, but reality still is in crisis. And somebody else wrote that something that we have learned is there is no enemy, which I'm interested in hearing more about.
Whoever wrote that, would you be willing to unmute and tell us what you were saying? That looks like was that Catherine?
Yes,
Yeah, that was me. Well, I think it's time to understand that I guess, once again, as in nonviolence, people are basically good, and that even, people we call the enemy are, well, it's best not to think of them that way. It's best to think of them as people who have had things happen that make them quite unpalatable to us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All of the rest of y'all, what's missing from this synthesis so far in terms of something that was in the chat? And this is the point where if you've got something that was a particular piece of the truth you want to make sure is seen and heard, we can hear from a couple people. So what's missing from what was in that chat about the signs of the times? I see Ethan wrote, in a time of great danger, especially for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people who are especially targeted in this interim period, and fearful for those family members while hope exists. So it's a time of great danger and hope. Okay, Paul Cienfuegos. You can come off mute, Paul.
Yeah, a rapidly building war between Democrats.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah. I saw in several places the a sensation of hope, as in, I've heard there's the Chinese symbol that for danger that also means opportunity. And so a chance to do something.
Thank you. There's a chance to do something. Okay, I'm going to look here. Okay, we're about to move forward. Later, we're going to come back and think about what is ripe to do. But on our way there, oh, I see Sherry is giving props to Cheryl, saying, Cheryl, you should say what you said. Cheryl, do you want to come off mute? And
sure. I couldn't find my mute at first, but here I am. I see opportunity because I've seen many organizations pull together and work together to make changes. And I think that work can continue. So
pulling together? Who pulling together?
Like Surge, standing up for racial justice, the groups in Georgia that helped people get out to vote. So like Stacey Adams. So advocacy groups, I would imagine, is maybe the best.
Excellent. Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sherry.
Okay, so in this next section, see, before we get to the like, well, what should we do? I felt like it would be useful and necessary to kind of remind ourselves of the things that we know about nonviolence. Because if we just jumped to the like, what should we do? Maybe we would forget some of those things. And I recognize that we've got people here who've been doing this work for 70 years or 60, and we've got people who've been doing the work for like 6 months. And so for some of the people who are here, you're going to be so impatient and wish that this next little section moved faster because you're like, yeah, we already know that. And for some other people here, you're going to be like, oh, can we go slower? Like, you're just doing that in a slide and talking about it for 3 minutes, and then we're going to go on. And so I'm sorry to people at both extremes. We're just doing what we're doing. So here we go. First of all, for all of us who participated in the Choose Democracy trainings, I want to remind us of the 4 keys to nonviolent resistance to a coup: widespread mobilization, alliance building, nonviolent discipline, and refusal to recognize illegitimate authority. So thousands of people went through trainings with Choose Democracy and their partner groups that highlighted these 4 keys to resisting a coup. At this point, it looks like that is a rapidly diminishing possibility, but we really still don't know what's going to go on until January 20th. And so it felt important to just remind all of us, for me to remind myself, that we've already been getting ready. And I know Bruce is telling me that there's like 12 affinity groups associated with the FOR in Washington State that have been thinking about coup defense. So we're just like a tip of the hat to Choose Democracy, all those good folks, and this good work. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, in these next couple, I'm going to ask people to raise their hand and tell me something about what they see. So we're moving on. So look at this. And if you're ready, raise your hand. And I want to remind you, I'm trying to hear from lots of different people here. So like, I'm especially looking for people who didn't just speak in the last round. Make sense of this diagram. What's happening here? What do you see? Glenn Anderson, will you unmute and talk to us?
Yeah, sure. I've been at this since the 1960s as a volunteer. What happens, I see in the diagram, is here's somebody who's doing something over and over again and doesn't get the results that he wants, and so he gives up. What we need to have is a movement building consciousness with strategies that build activities upon activities toward goals, and not just do the same stuff over and over again. Now, some things are worth repeating, but the overall movement needs to have steps toward achievable goals.
Yes, thank you so much. One of the things that really hit me when I saw this diagram is it's a sign with the no. And so it's just like carrying around the sign with the no. What are we going to protest this week? And going on and on and on, and the demoralization and the growth of apathy on the part of the movement participants. So someone else, let's hear what you see in this picture. These come from the Climate Resistance Handbook. There's 4 little mini diagrams here. What do you see? Can someone tell us the story of what's going on here? Raise your hand if you're ready to speak. Max.
I see, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I see first a sign that's an affirmative sign, you know, maybe painting out a vision. And then, you know, joining, like syncing up really tight, seeing eye to eye with one other person. That person joins and it builds from there. Oh, someone says they can't hear me.
Can you speak up louder?
I see an affirmative.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Okay, okay. I see a sign of affirmation, you know, kind of painting, you know, a direction towards something. And then I see them linking up with one other person and investing in seeing eye to eye with that one person. And then them going on from there, kind of life to life connections, building progressively in the direction originally outlined.
Beautiful. And it took me a minute, but going along with what Glenn was just saying, the group there is actually lifting weights together. Like they're really building their capacity to move towards the target, to move towards the goal. So someone who has ever gotten caught in this dynamic or intentionally made a choice to move to that one, could you tell us something about that? Either someone who's gotten caught in the constant protesting and gotten bored out of your mind and quit, or who found a different way of doing things. Can you talk to us? Glenn, I see your hand. I'm waiting to hear from some other folks out there because I know we got a lot of seasoned folks. Katrina, will you talk to us?
Hi. So maybe as I look at this graphic, what I can relate it to most in my life is actually the movement to normalize breastfeeding. And I'm sorry, I have a baby right now. And,
no apologies.
As well.
It's very likely that I'll have a 3 or an 8-year-old run in the middle of this webinar. So carry on.
Really, from the movement, I've been part of the Leche League organization for 17 years since my oldest was a baby. And that movement was founded by a small group of women. And even 17 years ago, breastfeeding was still much more taboo than it is now in public. It's been an amazing change to watch. And it's all been from just women standing up for each other and joining together and saying, hey, this change is important. It's normal. It's something that we need to talk about, that when we talk about things in the public, when we talk about taboo conversations, they become, like now I'm thinking about relating it to racism. Like it's been taboo to talk about racism in circles that I have been a part of, and that's changing in really good ways. And as we can normalize having conversations and seeing the problem, you know, I didn't even see when I started my breastfeeding journey, I didn't see, if I didn't nurse in public, I didn't think of that as a problem. But in many ways, like hiding something that was really normal away, like kept it full of shame for other people too. And seeing other moms say, hey, if you need to feed your baby, you need to feed your baby. That's was really important. And in the same way, calling out each other, saying, hey, yes, this has been your normal, but it's not okay. That movement building has been, that's an example where I've seen a really successful, encouraging
connection,
and that I can see some parallels to what's
people.
happening now.
Yeah.
Connection. The connections are the really connections, and working together to support each other.
Excellent. Thanks, Katrina. So, so we remember the keys to resisting a coup. We remember that we don't want to get stuck in endless protesting, and we want to build on a positive vision, mobilizing more and more people and building capacity to move towards a target. And we have this wonderful tool that's called a nonviolent direct action campaign. Now, I know all y'all know all about this, but here's a couple of key parts about it, because, and I just feel like it's so important to say it, because even today, even when Dave Dellinger said in 1965 that that he felt like at that time nonviolence was at the state of development that electricity was with Edison and Marconi, and here we are 60 years later, and you would think that maybe it would just be like widespread knowledge what a campaign is and how you use a campaign. It turns out it's not. Like really, we see a lot of protesting. And so these three qualities of a campaign from George Lakey's book from a couple of years ago, that it demands one or more specific changes, it identifies an opponent or target that can respond, and it escalates nonviolent tactics over time. And that last one, I really want to emphasize that it's not just we have a goal and we're going to protest every week on the same corner with the same people until we get our goal. But it's continuous ingenuity to escalate tactics over time. Has someone been part of a campaign where you escalated tactics because you were keeping your eyes on the prize and you wanted to put pressure on the power holders? And if you have 90 seconds to tell us about it, and no more. Someone out there. Now I know in this august group that we've got some people who've been in some campaigns. This is the Fellowship of Reconciliation. Okay. Anybody? Yes, Mary, I see your hand there. Mary, Margaret?
Yes. I think I'm unmuted, am I?
Yes.
Okay, I have a failure, just to contribute in the absence of anybody else. For about 3 months, a group of about, well, actually there have been 32, I believe, in total, but usually about a dozen or 15 every week. We go to a corner and we hold our Black Lives Matter signs, and we do it every week, and we haven't done anything innovative. So please help.
Uh-huh. So you're out there making the statement, you have deep conviction, you want people to hear, and yet there's a little bit of this infinity symbol going on, which might lead to a little bit of like, let's get tired, like we're getting tired, what's even going on here? What are we doing this for? And while so many of us believe that nonviolence is a way of life, and so we just go and do the right thing, it's also rewarding to feel like we're moving towards a goal that's a concrete and specific goal. So nonviolent direct action campaigns, thanks Mary Margaret for giving us an example on the other side. So this is another one of the things in our toolbox, just as we continue our quick reminders. Here's a couple of other reminders. Dr. King had a set of preaching points, like, you know, if you listen to his speeches and sermons or read them, that he had certain things that as he itinerated around and spoke hundreds of times a year, that he came back to. And there was one set of like a list that he talked about in the mid-1960s. That was the 6 aspects of ongoing nonviolent struggle. And they were documented in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? But I know from talking to people who were there and other reading that, for example, he talked about this in the SCLC project staff retreats and those kinds of things. So these ideas. And these next 2 slides are 2 of his 6 aspects of ongoing nonviolent struggle. So some other day and another thing, we can talk about the other 4. But the first one is a continued job of organizing. And he says, to produce change, people must be organized to work together in units of power. Political, economic, and other groups must be developed to protect their own interests and to produce change on their behalf. So this is not just people who feel like change needs to happen, or I think that the war should stop, and I'm talking to my partner about it at the table. But it's getting organized into units of power that have a strategy and are attempting to accomplish a thing. Does anybody want to speak to that?
This is Cheryl.
This notion? Okay, Cheryl.
I can't show you how I can raise my hand, so I apologize. But in the disabilities justice movement, there were leaders that rose, but they also would gather people for specific actions, and the people would agree. And it went from taking over federal buildings to climbing up the White House steps without their wheelchairs. And their goal was to pass the ADA, which we know.
I remember those pictures. Those were very moving and inspiring pictures.
Yes.
Yes. And so you're talking about a unit of power, people organized together in a unit of power that had a strategy and kept going and escalating the tactics until they accomplished their goal of passing the ADA.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's the next of the 2 that we're going to explore from Dr. King's 6 aspects of ongoing nonviolent struggle. Powerful action programs. Powerful action programs. That means nonviolent action focused on the structure of a system that must be changed. Now, in Kingian nonviolence, we talk about how within us, we've got aggression and we've got conciliation. And that oftentimes that our feeling function in that conciliation. Hello, Marie Hamilton. You are sharing your screen now. That's a handsome man on your desktop. Just a moment. Let me see if I can bring him. Well, I'll just keep talking, and maybe I can start my screen sharing again. Here we go. So, nonviolent action focused on the structure of a system. Bruce, is there some way you can help with that? It seems like if you can shut off participants sharing their own screens?
Yep.
Let me see if I can work on that.
He's not hearing you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So to get to the point of it, oftentimes we can feel bad about things that are happening in the world and be heartbroken or despairing. And what Dr. King is saying here is that our action programs become powerful when we focus on systemic change and not feeling badly or vilifying our opponents, no matter how good it feels to vilify some of those opponents. Does anyone else here feel good about, I mean, you know what I mean, about vilifying opponents? Like, doesn't it just feel good? Man, yeah, it does. At least a couple people were willing to admit it. Okay, so we've got nonviolent direct action campaigns, a continued job of organizing where instead of being isolated individuals, we are organizing to work together in units of power, and powerful action programs that are focused on systemic change. So, Bruce, I'm ready to do my first poll. Oh, it says now we lost my screen share. Thank you for that information. Just a second. And I'm going to show you, just a second. Bruce is about to put up the poll about this one, Bruce. And so what we're going to ask you is, are you presently in a group that is organizing to wield nonviolent power? Now, we've all been in these workshops for like 27 years, and we know this is how the work is done. I'm asking you for a reality check. Are you in a group that is organizing to wield nonviolent power right now? And so the answer could be one, no, two, maybe, and three, yes, absolutely. So Bruce, will you launch the poll?
Here we go.
Are you presently in a group that's organizing to wield nonviolent power? Okay, we've got 18, half the group has voted now. Getting there, we're getting there. Okay, we've got about 10 people left to vote. About 7 left. We'll give it about 10 more seconds for people to find their way there, or maybe someone's on a device and can't find it or something like that. Okay. Anybody else trying to find your way? It's been 34 and no more for the last little bit. So I think let's end it and share the results. Bruce?
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Great. So the results that we got were no, 38% of the group, maybe 38% of the group, and yes, definitely 24% of the group. Someone who said maybe, will you raise your hand and talk to us?
I'm including this one.
Okay, MJ. Jokana?
Well, we formed a little group of 5 women, but I don't really know if, I mean, I'm ready. Most of us are older and there's COVID and there's issues. So we're not exactly sure what we're going to actually be able to do. We've been more on readiness and phone calls so far. So I don't know what's happening, but you know, I definitely want to be ready. My biggest
You're
issue
looking
is
for
what's really
trouble.
happening.
Yeah. Excellent. So that's beautiful that you formed a group that's doing what you can as an initial step, and you're open to what might come. Someone who's in the yes, definitely, can you speak? I'm continuing to look for new voices. Sherry, you said yes. Will you talk to us, Dr. Sherry Bevel?
Sure. So I was part of a group. A lot of the same people are in the same group, but we just had a campaign in Rhode Island to get the name of the state changed. The official name until very recently was Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, which, you know, a lot of people don't want on their birth certificates. And there's some plantation politics that go on in Rhode Island accompanying that. So it was like a good short-term win, but I'm also working with some of the same people on employment discrimination in public institutions. So they're a group of students, and I'm helping get the word out and advocacy, and have been helping them write and distribute documents, basically. So there's some subtle and not so subtle, but usually hidden ways that people keep Black and brown people out of administration and so on. And so we're fighting that.
And so you're supporting people, and you're engaging in the procedures or the politics, and you're strategizing about how to challenge it head on.
Right.
Like, it sounds like you're doing all those levels of the work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pray for us.
I will. Yeah. Thank you. So we're going to keep moving, because we want to have enough time to talk about what nonviolent initiatives might be ripe right now. But there's one more thing that I want to get to in our kind of reminder of our toolbox here, which is leadership development. So in Kingian nonviolence, in the Kingian nonviolence approach, we talk about leadership development being one of the 3 core engines of getting anything done in nonviolence. It's one of the 3 social dynamics of nonviolence. So that's to say, for as amazing a leader as Dr. King or Ella Baker or Septima Clark, or the list goes on were, that the civil rights, Black-led freedom, human rights movement got where it got because they had such a deep investment in leadership development. There are 17,500 people who came through the citizenship education program and were challenged. Now, what are you going to do when you go home? So, and I have a picture here of Dorothy Cotton, who was the director of the citizenship education program. And her book, If Your Back's Not Bent, is a wonderful read. It's a wonderful read. And so I'm a part of the coordinating committee of the Oregon Poor People's Campaign. And after we've been organizing for a couple of years, and we're kind of looking around and saying, well, where are all these people? What we realized is we didn't have any process for developing member leaders, where we actually were providing political education and skills and plugging people into doing a thing. Somehow, I think we just thought it was going to be magic. And so this summer, we started a 3-webinar series that we repeat on a monthly basis for people who want to become members of the Oregon Poor People's Campaign. It includes history and political analysis, and what is our cultural DNA, and what you can do if you want to do something. So what I want to ask you is, are you in a group that is actively, and here's the second poll, Bruce, that is actively and intentionally developing leaders for more effective use of nonviolent power? So are you in a group that's actively and intentionally developing leaders for more effective use of nonviolent power? Glenn, I'm seeing your hand up, but I think maybe that was from before. Is that right?
Yeah, that was from before.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're up to 34, which was the number that we got to last time. So I think we can call it good. And those other 7 people, maybe you'll respond in the chat or something else like that. So we have no 41%, perhaps 29, and yes 29. anybody who'd like to speak about this and this reflection on leadership development as the engine, as one of the three engines that makes nonviolent social change possible, tell us what your group is and what you're doing to develop leaders. Please raise your hand. And I'm always looking for people we haven't heard from yet. So you can raise your hand. Aganita.
Well, I'm a volunteer with Move On, and it started out, they just asked for volunteers, and I've been trained and so forth. And within the group, you get lots of support and so forth to become could eventually become a leader. I went through training. I was a trainee. Now I'm up to an agent, they call it. And there's, as you know, they have campaigns, many campaigns, and now they're moving on to working with the Georgia election. And so, yeah, I think that's an example.
Thank you so much. You got involved just as a volunteer, and then it kept providing more and more training and moving you up in what you were ready to do. It sounds like
that's right. And
they kept you interested and engaged as they did that.
That's right. And they were part of an alliance of a lot of groups that are part of the Protect the Results Alliance.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so as we move to the next part, here's the quick recap. Using nonviolence, here are some of our tools and language. In this special time, these 4 keys to resisting a power grab at the time of an election. Not getting stuck in the apathy-inducing infinite loop of negative protesting. And instead, moving with a positive vision to connect with more people and build capacity. Nonviolent direct action campaigns. Organizing into units of power. Focused on the structural change of a system. And developing leaders. That if we don't develop leaders, we can't sit around and complain because we don't have any. So here's what I want to ask you. What's ripe now? In light of what we shared back at the beginning of the moment that we're living in, many barriers to getting anything done. There is also hopefulness, democracy in crisis. We must take strategically smart, nonviolent action. There's people who are already pulling together to make changes. What I'm gonna do now is make sure I've got the right link. I'm gonna put into chat the link to this slide. And what I'm gonna ask you to do is to come directly to this slide and to answer, if you have an answer, you don't have to write something if you can't think of anything, what nonviolent initiatives might be ripe in this moment, So I recognize that things are unclear. We don't know what's going to happen with the presidential transition right now. These next 2 months are still dicey. And we have a Democratic administration coming in that may share some vision and goals with people on this call and also doesn't share some goals. So where can we put all these things that we know into practice? I'm especially interested in things that don't focus on legislative advocacy, in things that are not just about protesting, but they're about using the best of the nonviolent direct action tradition. So I understand there's a lot of exciting electoral stuff to work on, but we're the FOR, people. Where are the places that you see opportunity for powerful nonviolence campaigns. Maybe you see someone doing it and you want to name it. If this slide fills up, we can go to the next one. And I want to encourage you to be reading what people are writing and don't duplicate. And if, in fact, if you see one that that you also are excited about and you think it's really ripe for that right now, there's a little pile of stars in the bottom right corner here. And if you click on one, you can just drag it over and put it on one that you like. And if it doesn't matter if you see a star there already, I'm kind of wanting to see the energy of the group in terms of what you're excited about, in terms of what we're ripe for right now. We've got protect the vote. We've got something that says making policing systems. What is that one? What's the rest of that? And whoever that was, just unmute and talk to us.
To tell if that was mine, but I was trying to say reforming police systems. So I don't know if I put something at the bottom that doesn't show or what.
Excellent.
I'll change it.
Reforming police systems. Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Okay, it looks
I
like
can't
at least
figure out
somebody's
how to
jumped
write
over.
on this thing.
No worries. You can put it in chat and we'll move it over for you. The way that you get there is by following the link that I put in the chat, and I'll put it back in there, but you don't need to worry about it at all because you can just look at it on the screen here. So we've got putting pressure on the Biden administration to really address the needs of, let me get this, of these times. Getting young adults involved with hope, releasing immigrants. So please, you can continue adding things to the slide, continue digesting what's here, or bringing a star over. If you want me to move a star for you, let me know where it needs to go. You can put stars on more than one. We're just trying to pick up like which one of these, if we're talking about nonviolence initiatives that use the best of this tradition, this like 200 to 2,000 year tradition of courageous, strategic, tactical action that puts pressure on the power holders and keeps its eye on the prize. What are opportunities that are ripe right now? So I see protect the vote and organizing potential responses to a possible coup. Are those kind of the same thing or not exactly? They're not exactly, because one's about the balloting and all that kind of stuff. Okay, affordable mental health care.
Can't get any stars to move at this moment, or?
Okay, I can help you. Where would you like it to go? Mary Margaret Pruitt put achieving universal health care with government funding in Washington, Oregon, and California. Let me go ahead and put this here.
It's too small.
So I think,
I can't read this.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I'm sorry, but
get rid of, I'm gonna start deleting some of these. I think we've got a good set of ideas. I'm gonna start deleting some of the empty ones so that we can make the other ones a little bit bigger.
I was going to say they're really small. It's hard to read any of them. If some of us
Great.
are not that young anymore.
Yeah, it's good. So one thing that I can do is make the text a little bolder for all of them.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The text is really small and I can't make chat work on this computer and I'm not going to try to get you to do it. But I just want to stand up for the fact that we need to wear a mask and think long term. Most of us are older. I mean, the best thing we can do for our country is to work on Georgia in whatever way we can, and wear a mask and do everything we can to protect our loved ones and ourselves to not get COVID for a period until we have the vaccine. And I don't care if that sounds like the most boring thing you've ever heard. I think that is what we do now because we can. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we can't do now because we can't be with other people unless we're 15 feet from them. I mean, I think FOR should be proud of all those people. I used to do that, you know, like I have been an elections worker. I thought that was one of the most nonviolent things I've ever seen was what the people who counted votes did all over this country to save our democracy. So sorry to butt in, but I mean, I think we've all been part of an amazing nonviolent wave that's so damn big that we can't even see ourselves in it because it's just so huge. The end.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually
Thank you, Mary.
There's
so David Jensen and Bernard Lafayette, who are the co-authors of the Kingian Nonviolence Curriculum, which codified their experiences working with Dr. King, formed an organization together that's called the Institute for Human Rights and Responsibilities. And I think that one of the challenges that we've seen laid bare in society around this whole question of masks is that so many people in the United States are more in touch with their rights and their sense of being entitled to something than their sense of responsibilities to fellow citizens. So it's like a deeper level than a nonviolent campaign, but just the whole idea that we have a responsibility to the common good. So thank you, Mary, for speaking up. I'd like to hear when people think about the nonviolent tools that we're talking about in our refresher section, what stands out to you on this? Like, what is one of those that is exciting to you? Like, as you apply those kinds of nonviolent direct action campaigning, what is one of them here that you'd like to speak about to us? I'm trying to make the text a little bigger. Is it still illegible for everyone?
Yep.
Some people still can't see it. Okay, well, I'm going to read some of the things that are up here.
It looks fine.
And, well, we've got all different devices and glasses prescriptions. So protect the vote, reforming police systems, releasing immigrants, getting young adults involved with hope, putting pressure on the new Biden administration to really address the needs of these times, wear a mask, think long term, achieving universal health care with government funding in Washington, Oregon, and California, anti-racism and universal suffrage, get out the vote, the Georgia election is not done, organizing potential responses to possible coup attempt, engaging new voters to continue to vote, secure truth in government leaders. I'm not sure what that one means. If whoever wrote it wants to come off mute and tell us, you can.
Yeah,
I'll
Matt,
keep reading until you get off mute. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Matt, it's just about time that we stop electing people who just refuse to tell the truth.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Okay. So building conversations in local communities across political lines, Medicare for all, end ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, nonviolent direct actions by the Democratic Party base to insist that party leadership starts trusting and supporting its base. Affordable mental health care, community diverse mental health services, maybe those two are related, ending mass incarceration, affordable housing in Portland, and revamp Electoral College, and the million-person march in defense of democracy. I'm going to catch up on.
Whoever said check view options, because
chat.
I did get it, make it bigger. It's a miracle.
Oh, wonderful. It's a miracle. We need some miracles about now, even if it's with Zoom. I'm going to check what's happening here in chat. So here's what I think that I want to do. We have about 5 more minutes before I turn it back over to Bruce and Janice. And let me move this. I'm going to open up a different so there's a social psychologist named Kurt Lewin who talked about the process of advocating for change and developed a tool that was called force field analysis. And what he says was, if you're a change advocate, one of the ways that you can analyze what's facing you is by looking at the forces pressing for change on the one hand and the forces pressing in the reverse. And so what I'd like to suggest as we move towards closing, as we look at all of these, that we are part of a powerful tradition of nonviolent direct action, which operates alongside legislative advocacy, but it's different than that. And that it exerts power on the power holders. And that by developing campaigns and powerful direct action and organizing initiatives that are focused on structural change, we can press whoever is in the middle or move this goal. If the goal here is end ICE, we can move that goal, move that ball down the field. What do you think it's going to take? If we're excited about all of these things, and we've got this nonviolence toolbox that maybe we're using and maybe we just know about it, what's it going to take to get from here to there? So I think that that's where I would like to invite a few comments as we close, and I will, my question, I'm going to put it in chat, is, what would it require of us to develop or join nonviolence campaigns that could exert that kind of power? What would it require? Oh, I sent that to Marion by accident. Second, I'll send it back to all of you. What would it require of us to develop or join nonviolence campaigns that could exert power, that could move the ball down the field in this force field analysis? That could not just get stuck and say, the Republicans, they're against us. We're never going to get it. There's a divided Senate. We'll never get what we want. But would instead keep a sense of strategic hope. What would it require of us? progress is obstructed. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a minute. Progress is obstructed by both of the big political parties, Republicans and the institutional Democratic Party, prevent the public from getting what we want. Well, it's cool that we have this tool of nonviolent action that we could press on both of the parties. I'm not meaning to unfairly be biased against the Republicans. I'm with you, Glenn. What would it require of us to develop or join nonviolence campaigns that could exert power? Looking there. Maybe we'll even hear a new voice before this is over. You can put it in chat or you can raise your hand and speak. Sherry says education. Sherry, will you come off mute and tell us what do you mean? Who's getting educated about what?
Well, you know, I'll use the example of the changing Rhode Island and Providence plantations piece. I helped and participated, but I felt like this is mostly symbolic. You know, there's some real serious structural things. But one of the things that I learned was there's a whole lot of gaslighting. People gaslight themselves a lot in New England. So the Speaker of the House in Rhode Island made a comment, well, if there was even slavery in Rhode Island. I know that Rhode Island was involved in the trade. So anyway, there were some real creative educational tools. Some women took a projector and projected the census figures from 1750 onto the side of his law firm. You know, so, you know, that kind of, that was public education. So that, you know, that's an example of the kind of thing. So this came up for a vote. And 25%, it lost 75 to 25 10 years ago. But with this campaign, it won by like 52%. But people, I mean,
that was a lot of work in the last 10 years. Yeah.
People had really convinced themselves, and it was intergenerationally. I know a school teacher who didn't know that there was slavery in Rhode Island and was very angry when she found out that there was, and she's in her 70s. So, you know, people really just don't even understand really basics of history.
Yeah. Thank you. Ethan says popular education tools, creative form, which you're just speaking about, Sherry, creative forms of engagement, music, art, video, humor, incentives, or unique partnerships across political party interest lines. Do you want to speak about that, Ethan?
Yeah, I loved what Sherry was just sharing, first of all. Thank you. And I mean, I guess I was saying a couple different things there. I mean, I put a couple things into that grid that you did, and one of the ones I've put in was around mass incarceration. And I think amidst the trauma of the last 4 years, one of the things that came out in one small progressive step was the first step legislation, I think it was, or second, I forgot what the exact title is now, first or second chance. And that was put, you know, kind of across political and party lines in terms of efforts to help release people from carceral states. And the White House took a lot of credit for it, but was actually pushed by you know, grassroots movements and across party lines. So I think that was working across different lines and where people were coming together. And in terms of the piece around sort of art, media, et cetera, and again, I mean, I think Sherry's example was really powerful. I was just, something that had come up for me. I grew up in the Hudson Valley of New York State, and I grew up in the ether of like the Hudson River Sloop Clearwater movement that really, it was just a small movement initially of people coming together to try to clean up the Hudson River. But it utilized like festivals, strawberry festivals, pumpkin festivals, to bring people together to talk about what was happening with the river, to really engage people one-on-one in a conversation around environmental destruction of our community, of our bioregion. And that's what led ultimately to dramatic change that could never have been conceived at that point in the 70s. So there's more I could say, but hopefully that opens up a couple of those points I was making.
Thank you. Thank you. That vision of organizing and bringing more people in and doing it with creative methods outside the box. Well, the clock is running out for me, and I'm about to hand it back over to Bruce and Janice. And I think one thing I want to say about what it will require is a decision to not get stuck in what feels like the quicksand of our times. That we have these tools and a legacy of nonviolence that does go back to Dr. King and Ella Baker and Diane Nash and Jim Bevel. And it goes on back further. You name some of those ancestors for me. Give me some more. Just unmute. If we're going back into the 1940s.
John Dewey.
Into the 1930s. Okay. Call them out.
Mohandas Gandhi.
There we go.
Emma Goldman.
Leo Tolstoy. Emma Goldman. Call them out.
Bayard Rustin.
Bayard Rustin. So we're a part of this legacy of people who decided not to get stuck in the quicksand, but to develop creative, strategic action that was relevant in their times and could catalyze mass numbers of people. We can do it now too. Even if the Republicans and the Democrats are both committed to be fighting each other. Is that worse than what other people have experienced who've used nonviolent action? I don't think so. So the journey continues onward. Thank you, Bruce. Back to you.
Thank you, Matt. So, and for the last couple minutes, we're going to take a look at sort of what people can do. What is FOR doing regarding this issue of next steps? So let me show you a couple of different web pages that we started back in mid-October with starting a program to line up with the choosedemocracy.us, which was training for preparation for a possible coup. What I'm going to do is share my screen here real quick and raise your hand if you can see the screen. Can anybody see the screen? Okay, great. So on the WWFOR.org is the Western Washington FOR website. This is the page that people go to for if you're interested in that. Choose democracy, protect the results, protect the election. And as Matt said, that was organized primarily before the election, while there was get out the vote efforts being taken underway, because of the possibility of a power grab by Trump. And the indications were pretty good. As it turns out, what was predicted was prescient, because he is trying to do the things that were predicted as pathways that he might succeed at in being able to retain power, even though he lost the election. What we have described here is essentially several phases of the movement. And the first phase was getting out the vote and dealing with winning the election so that we could change the political administration to change the political climate. That is, as we have said already, not completely over, because the Georgia election is still pending, and with it, the control of the Senate, and with it, the ability of the Biden administration to make good on promises for climate change and for economic legislation, a whole range of different things on the agenda that will be very different if Mitch McConnell is heading the Senate rather than Chuck Schumer. So that's phase one, and we're still in that. We are also concurrently in phase two, which is protecting the election, trying to make sure that there isn't a power grab. And that still is a risk, though seems to be a diminishing risk. And so people will prioritize what do they want to do with their time during this period. You might say, well, I thought that the risk was greater before, so I put more time there, now less, so I'll decide to prioritize differently. What I would challenge people to do is walk and chew gum, which means be working on get out the vote until January 5th, which is when the Georgia election will take place. And so that's the end of that phase. The end of the phase of protecting the election is January 20th. There's obviously overlap. And once we start January 20th, we have phase three, which would be the first 100 days of a president's administration, is the greatest opportunity that they have, dating back to Franklin Roosevelt, of saying, yeah, this is now I have the mandate and I want to push things through, and that's the most opportune time. So that's an opportunity for making significant change in a short period of time. The fourth and final phase, I think, is where we have to wake up to the reality that 71 million people voted for the Trump administration after enduring 4 years of the Trump administration. Thank God 75 million people voted for Biden-Harris and a rejection of Trump. But there is still great work to be done. And I'm thinking of Matt's word of, or it was another comment that we shouldn't think of, I think it was Katie who said we shouldn't think of people as enemies. We shouldn't call them enemies. And the old adage that an enemy is simply a friend who I don't understand. And for many of us, I think there's a great frustration with, I don't understand how 71 million people could vote for an administration that has had so many things with it that were so wrong in so many ways. And so I think that we're called to that. We need to reach a deeper understanding of what motivated and drove those people to cast those votes. And that would be the fourth phase, but it's longer term, it's deeper roots, it's more prescient. What I would take from Matt's presentation is the call to campaign, not just to go out and protest, but to actually campaign, design our campaigns, pick our particular target, and then design the campaign, get the small group together, and actually wage the campaign. So with that, in the current moment, the FOR is working with the group Hold the Line, also Choose Democracy, and what they have put out is a commitment to uphold democracy, talking about strategy and messaging considerations from November 4th onward. So this is somewhat of a study guide that you can take, and that is here. And let me start throwing things into the chat so that folks can have these links. The Protect the Election with the FOR site, I'll throw that into the chat as well so that people can look there. Let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. Let's see, Hold the Line is on here somewhere. Come on. Well, the other thing I can put up here is we are trying to put on the website events, training events, and other events that are related to this theme. So check the calendar because there are a host of events that are continuing to be planned by other organizations. And so use that for getting stuff to protect the results. I'll go ahead and just get that up here. That's the coalition, one of several, but one of the biggest, that was planning to have actions in case there is a coup. And Choose Democracy was doing that as well. And then we've got the Hold the Line. And let me see if I can get that in there. I'm not doing too well. I thought I had it up. Hold the Line guide. And what I would recommend that people do is go to the WWFOR site. There are individual actions you can take, and then clicking here for forming what we're calling an election protection group. That's that small group, that unit of power. If you're not already in a group, and if you are, great, work with the group. But if you're not, then work to pull together a small group that can be designing the next steps, that you can be talking with people about the next steps. And what we had were an immediate response of small actions on street corners to try to make it so it was quick to send out. And we have 8 steps in how to do that. So form the group, connect your group with others, choosing constituencies to focus on, identifying those individuals within the constituency, and then developing a plan. From the Otpor campaign in Serbia, this is something that I learned from Rivera's son. They had a 3-step acronym that they used called ART, the art of building a movement. And the ART stood for action, holding an action, then recruit, and then train. So when you hold an action, you attract other people to that because you're doing something. You then recruit those people, you bring them into the organization, and as Matt was saying, you engage in leadership development, you train them. When I was at the James Lawson Institute, James Lawson encouraged what I consider to be 2 other letters to be added to that acronym of ART. The first was P, which was prepare and plan. And he emphasized greatly that doing just protests, one-off protest, wasn't going to do it. We had to develop campaigns. So he emphasized the planning, then the action, then the recruiting, then the training. And the last letter in the acronym would be Y, which stands for yes. And the Nashville campaign was the thing that he used as his template. There's a wonderful half-hour video on that from A Force More Powerful that's available on the internet at ICNC. The Y stands for yes, which is to make sure that you're aiming towards something positive and you're giving, quote unquote, the opposition a way to save face and to be able to say yes to your campaign objectives. And that's what they did with Nashville. So that's a quick guide of, if you're interested in taking action, we'd refer you back to the website and clicking on that link to say, yeah, I'm interested, get me some further resources.
I want to just give Matt a chance to get our appreciation. So if you can clap or wave your hands and let him know how much we appreciate his time with us and his preparation. Thank you so much, Matt. And if you need to leave to be with your 3-year-old and your 8-year-old, we totally understand. We're moving now, and other people can leave as well. We're going to move now into 30 more minutes that Bruce will facilitate if people want to ask any more questions, or I don't know if there's anything else that you had in mind, Bruce. But thank you again, Matt.
And Matt, the question I would have is, if you want to hang out for a little bit more, you can, and we can do question and answer. If you don't want to, I'll hang around and we can, field questions and such from folks who want to hang out. But officially 8 o'clock, we're allowing people to turn into pumpkins and retire. Matt, how about you?
I can stay for a few more minutes, but not.
Questions.
Got it. And if folks want to throw their questions into the chat, because again, we've got enough people here that we can't see everybody raising hands otherwise. Matt, one of the questions that I would have for you is, do you have other resources that you would point people to for doing what you were recommending, the campaign building and the, forming units of power? Where would you turn people to for resources?
That's a good question. I feel like you've just rattled off several really great resources. So I'm not sure, other than making an annotated bibliography or something like that, at a certain point, we don't need more books about it. We just need the resolve to do it. So I think all the ones that you mentioned were great. Maybe one that I can mention that you haven't is, there's a book called This Is an Uprising by Mark and Paul Engler, which talks about the kind of two dual parallel organizing traditions and how to make the most of both of them. And the Englers have woven that into an approach called momentum. And I won't say more about it right now, but the book is really good. And the momentum model is really smart and contemporary in terms of applying insights from the past to organizing today.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Glenn, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad Mark mentioned the Engler brothers book, This Is an Uprising. It's amazingly good. They also have a website, thisisanuprising.org. And I read the book. I recommend it highly. I use this, I refer to it during the workshops I conduct about nonviolent grassroots organizing. One of the good things about the Englers book is that they keep referring to the power of nonviolence and why every movement we do has to be nonviolent, and how the movements have built upon each other from those in the past to those that have succeeded. I do encourage people to contact me, and I put this in the chat, if you'd like to take my series of workshops on nonviolent grassroots organizing. They are very practical, they're grounded in nonviolence, and people who've taken them have found them very useful. So you can contact me through the chat and take these. The series is starting now on Sunday afternoons, Monday evenings, your choice, either Sunday afternoons or Monday evenings. It'll go 6 straight weeks. Thanks.
Janice, are you seeing any questions for Matt?
From MJ.
How can we help to pressure the government to sign the ascertainment paperwork? I've already written my legislators. Matt, any comments?
That's a good question. How would we apply the things we've been talking about in terms of power? Because you're talking about where legislative advocacy ends and nonviolent power begins. And so what would it look like? Would it look like people on street corners in 100 cities saying, sign the papers? What does it look like? That's just like a mass action decentralized version. I don't know what the power analysis would say. How do we press on the General Services Administration to do what they're supposed to do? Has someone else been looking into that more?
I would comment briefly that one of the target for the commitment to uphold democracy was elected officials and election officials, as well as military and law enforcement. And just yesterday, there was a big newspaper article in the Times about how election officials had routinely and consistently all across the nation said, we don't see any fraud in this election. It's been as secure and as airtight as we've ever seen it. And that commitment to uphold democracy encouraged people to write letters to the individual election officials in their county, in their state, locally. And those are people that don't get lobbied all the time. So I don't know that there's cause and effect, but I would just say that that's one way that people power can be wielded. The group down in Oregon, Speak Up Now, SUN is the statewide coalition down there, that they're targeting military, National Guard, law enforcement as part of their target constituency. And they're choosing specific individuals within the state structure, the National Guard, et cetera, and directing their campaigns and their letter writing, et cetera, to those individuals who are in key positions within the pillar of support, the key constituency that's being aimed at. So it's a way to take it from a theoretical and bring it all the way down to a very individual target, and then have people direct their pressure to those folks to say, yes, maintain your constitutional oath, refuse to obey unconstitutional orders from above.
Sorry to butt in here again, but I really agree with that. I think that's what I meant about how invisible all this good activity has been. All these people, I mean, if you've ever counted votes, there's always a Republican and a Democrat watching a Republican and a Democrat at every table. That's how it's done. I mean, you know, it's totally visible. So, you know, talk to somebody, you know, if any of your friends ever worked, I happened to work on counting the votes for in the Chris Gregoire and Dino Rossi campaign runoff, and it was very close. And that's why I know individually, because I did it. But talk to anybody that you know who took part, you know, who was an employee, and get their story and share it with others. You know, just to it's just so hard to steal an election in this country when the man that Bruce mentioned and that very encouraging article, all these people are just doing their jobs because they have integrity, because they believe that they have a future and that they don't want their future to be, I was a crook who helped somebody steal an election. You know, their choices. I can be this person who had integrity and just did my job. I mean, it's so humble and wonderful. It amazes me, and it makes me very relaxed and feeling very positive. How many of these unspoken heroes?
And Bert, I see you. Bert, before you talk, since Matt said he could only stay for a short time, what I'd like to do is ask people a quick, what we call fist to five in the Mike Yarrow Peace Fellowship. It's a quick way to evaluate. 0 was, this wasn't that helpful to me. 5 was, this was very helpful to me. So 3, you know, helpful, but not the most helpful. Could people hold their hands up and give, how many fingers would you give this in terms of how helpful was it to you in trying to decide what do you do now in this historical moment? Thank you. That helps us. Now go ahead, Bert, and then I think Alan is next.
I'd like to propose and ask Matt and you, Bruce, and anyone else, what seems to me the most likely scenario for a coup attempt, actually. And it would not be going to the courts saying that, well, there's been stealing of an election without having any evidence. And the method that I've read from Bart Gellman in his long article in The Atlantic is, if the governor and the legislature are both controlled by Republicans who are willing to go along with this strategy, what they can do is simply announce that they have determined, without evidence again, that the election was fraudulent. And therefore, the people who have been named to be the electors to go and vote to actually make the election. We are going to take over our authority to do that, and we are going to name the electors who will go to Washington to decide who the next president will be. So that may mean that if there are enough people on both sides who are engaged in doing this, there can be two slate of electoral college electors going to Washington. And that consequence, that strategy, has no legal determinant as to which side should be decided, and it could likely get to the Supreme Court, which I think needs to be some strategy to get to the Supreme Court other than simply announcing that there's fraud without evidence. So I'd like to know, A, what people think of that likelihood, or do they have a strategy they can suggest? And if so, if that seems like a possibility, what people would suggest is a way to deal with it. I hope that was clear.
Thank you, Bert. Matt, you want to take a shot at that one?
Well, I can just speak briefly. As I've been reading about that, dual slates of electors, it sounds like one of the things that would be a backstop against it is that in a lot of the states, they had to announce their slate, like the electors were selected already. They can't, they're like any state could change their processes for it anytime they want before the election. But once the election has taken place, there's it's less usual for that kind of thing to happen. At least this is one of the analyses that I was reading, was saying that it would be very unusual, like unprecedented for that to happen. I think there was only one ever, which was Hawaii and Nixon. And it was like one state. And I think they said that Nixon didn't accept the electors, even though they were for his benefit. So I don't know. It made me relax, the last couple of articles that I've read about that it's a possibility, but very unlikely. But maybe someone else has been watching it and you have a different opinion.
Bruce?
Well, Bert, I would direct your attention to the Choose Democracy website, so choosedemocracy.us, because they have been updating it in terms of their assessment of where the risk is. And they also have a what they call a coup-o-meter. So they tilt it towards, yes, a coup is in process. No, it's not. It's, fading back. So they're watching that and they're using that meter to sort of direct people. You can also sign up for text updates from Choose Democracy. So if you want to be alerted about things moving in the direction of a coup, in their opinion. Otherwise, I would say, the New York Times has been having quite a few articles on this. The Atlantic's been doing a lot. The New Yorker's been doing a lot. There's quite a few big publications that have been having well-written articles trying to assess the risk. And the Hold the Line guide follows the Gelman article that you talked about from the Atlantic in terms of mapping out what are the different pathways that Trump could use. And you identified one of them, and there are a couple more, but they are also continuing to monitor those pathways to see what might be left. And it is a diminishing risk in most people's opinion, but everybody concludes with, we're not out of the woods yet.
Thank you.
Alan, I think you were next. Oh, you'll have to come off mute.
I just want to make a comment. I'm with the Veterans for Peace. I'm on the board of directors. And one of the things we've been doing now for this last year is that we've been publishing articles in the Ranger and the Airlift, which is the weekly newspaper down at Fort Lewis. And we're trying to cross lines and talk with the soldiers about what their responsibility is. And the basis of it all is the Nuremberg trials, where you just can't get away with, well, I was following orders. That doesn't go anymore. That doesn't fly. We, especially being in the prosecution, we pointed that out with the SS folks, officers, that you can't use that as a defense, is that you have a moral responsibility to decide what is right and what is wrong. And if you think that there's something wrong, you need to speak up and not follow the orders. But I just wanted to say that we're continually trying to cross the lines over into and talk with the soldiers and just reinforce that they have support out here, that there's a lot of civilian organizations that, you know, if they make that decision that they are going to disobey an order, that, you know, they can come out here, and we have organizations, lawyers that will help them in their defense. And then I know that Colin Powell and General McCafferty and General Millen, there's a lot of high-ranking officers in the military that just oppose the idea of Trump's thoughts of coup, and I think it has to be a concern. I'm concerned about it, but it's in the back of my mind, and I hope it doesn't happen. But anyway, I just think there's a tremendous support even within the military and veterans that we don't want to see this happen. And then just another comment, I was involved in a conspiracy trial with veterans in 1972 to 74. And those of you that have seen the Chicago 7 movie, Bill Kunstler was our lawyer too, defender. And our case got kicked out of court because of all things, some provocateurs or FBI people got caught in a closet trying to hear in on our conversation during the recess. And so we went back and told the judge, and the judge just threw the case out of court. But what I saw happening after that, there was just a tremendous relief. You know, we made it. We got out of it. You know, we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just trying to organize and bring the war home and letting, you know, just bringing awareness to the public of what was going on. But I see the same thing happening that has happened after this election, where yes, we voted Biden and Harris to be our next president and vice president, and there's just a tremendous relief. But I think what has to be done is now is the time we got to organize. You know, we can't just let that go. I mean, there was tremendous support there, a lot of organizing, a lot of people out on the streets, and somehow we got to pick it up. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, there was, I think about a week ago, a poll that came out of military service members, and it showed high ranking and then also, you know, the rank and file. And there were slight differences. Basically, they were polling on who they were favoring in the presidential election. It was pretty fascinating to read that. I believe that was in the Times. And that does make a difference in terms of how you try to influence that very key constituency of military and also law enforcement.
Right.
I've got a friend who's a lawyer who wrote a memo just out of the goodness of his heart after Trump won the election in 2016, because he was afraid that Trump would be using the Incarceration Act and declaring martial law. And he wanted to figure out legally, as a former member of the JAG Corps, how hard would that be for Trump to do, and could he get away with it? And essentially his conclusion was there wouldn't be any legal impediment. So that is one of the things that we need to be careful of as organizers. If we're going to put a lot of people into the street and we're going to have other people as counter protesters, it may be a pretext for Trump to then be able to use a martial law type move, which has been done with other coup attempts and dictatorships, where they use that as a ruse to be able to hold on to power. So anyway, Alan, any other comments or questions that folks have? Otherwise, I think we might be just about good to wrap it up.
And we need to let Mary close.
Thank you. Well, I feel that I'm not being unrealistic. I mean, I think I'm actually being realistic, and that's that I feel like we can all, even if we're at home, even if we can't be out in the streets, risking arrest, because in my view, if we're risking arrest, we're risking COVID for ourselves and the arresting officers. And I don't like that. So I think letting go of that particular tactic for me and for many of us on this call. But, you know, I just urge people, you know, if you have to just Google Stacey Abrams or the two campaigns in Georgia, if that's what you're for, do what you can do. You know, that's my message, is don't worry about what you can't do, because you can't do it, and do what you can do, and then just appreciate. Thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you all for taking these issues very seriously. And thank you for all those people who are doing the right thing and making this thing work much better than I expected that it would have worked by now. Yeah, I have an image. It's a postcard image of a cat jumping from one building to another. And that's how I see myself. And it's like, I've left the secure ground on one side and I haven't landed on the other side, but I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to fall in the chasm between the two buildings. I feel confident that we Americans are going to land in a good place. It may be a rocky landing, a little bit like an airplane landing when there's rough weather. It may some bumpiness as we land, but that's my sense of this moment. And I really appreciate so much that you all are taking this moment seriously and doing whatever you can to maximize democracy, to maximize nonviolence in this moment. Again, want to invite everybody, show up if you would like that, to our December 20th Sunday at 6:30. It'll be on the WWFOR website, and we'll be sending out emails. We won't be sending out a postcard to invite you to that, but we will be sending out emails to invite you. So thanks to our speaker, and thanks Max and all the youth in the Mike Yarrow Peace Fellowship. We're really honored to have you with us tonight, and very encouraged by the commitment and imagination and intelligence that you're bringing to campaigns that are yet to come, campaigns that are going on right now. Thank you so much, Max. And thanks, Bruce and Janice, for hurting us cats, including me. And my apologies, my computer, something's wrong with my chat. I just can't get it to send anything. So my apologies for my lack of politeness tonight. I did my
Be a
best.
computer without technical difficulties. It just comes with it. The WWFOR Fall Retreat is this coming Saturday, the 21st. Right. There will be 3 folks from the Mike Yarrow Peace Fellowship on a youth panel, plus 3 speakers, including the executive director of the National FOR, Dr. Reverend Emma Jordan Simpson. So if you want more discussion of what do we do next, that's a good place to get it. With that, we'll bid everybody adieu. Thank you so much all for hanging in there and participating in the discussion. Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta. The seas are rising, but the struggle is long. We're gonna turn history, turn it around.